Hi, welcome to the American Center Online, and my name is Jahan Jones-Rykowski. I am a Cultural Affairs Officer in the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, and tonight we're going to start our four-part series on Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was our then president, 1941 speech on why the U.S. was involved in World War II. And the reasons why we were because of four essential freedoms of democracy: the freedom of speech, freedom to worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. And tonight we will have a discussion on freedom from want and what does that mean. And our speaker is Laura Keefe. Laura is a first tour Foreign Service officer. She comes to U.S. Embassy Moscow with over 10 years experience in U.S. national security policy and corporate social responsibility. She holds a bachelor's degree in history and political science from Northwestern College and a master's degree in security policy studies from the George Washington University, also my alma mater. She learned Russian at the State University of Nizhny Novgorod. I am still working on my Russian, so I butchered that, but Laura can pronounce it for me when she starts. Hey, Laura, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Jahan. It's so good to be here tonight and to be able to be talking about this. So I did study in Nizhny Novgorod. Can you guys hear me? Just to double check. Yes? Okay, great. So I studied in Nizhny Novgorod. Lobachevsky is the name of the university. And I studied Russian way back in 2003. And I have lifelong friends from the program, both Russians and other Americans who were with me. So I really love, anytime you can study abroad, I recommend it. But I also lived here in Russia. I was part of the Alpha Fellowship program, and I did some work in corporate social responsibility field. So that is helping our businesses take action within their communities and also to fundraise for potential charities and programs that they might have going on in those communities. So I've got a long history with Russia and somewhat of a history also with this concept of freedom from wants and what that means. It's really interesting because growing up, I was definitely a Reagan era baby, meaning that a lot of things that I learned at school, a lot of the focus was on freedom to do something, freedom to worship, freedom to have, freedom of speech, etc. And there was a lot of focus on those first two, freedom from wants versus, or freedoms rather than the freedom from want and freedom from fear. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about that today. A little bit of history on the World War or on the pre-World War II, what we call it here, the Great Patriotic War here in Russia. So FDR, I'll call him, was in the second or third term. He was, as Jahan mentioned, giving the State of the Union address. And he was doing it at a time that was at the end of the Great Depression in the United States. And also the whole entire world at this point seemed to be at war. So FDR was taking a stand for, this is what we need to prepare ourselves for. But drilling down on the idea of freedom from want, within the United States, he wanted a great big program. And this was the start of the Social Security program, where he announced wanting to do this type of having a pension so that all citizens could have a pension. And in America, we call that Social Security. And he said, hey, we're going to raise taxes, and that's how we're going to pay for it. And then he also focused on this idea of economic prosperity. So part of his speech was focused on peace and prosperity through economic treaties. So it wasn't just good for America or for democracy, it was really good for the whole world. And then to tie it into the Norman Rockwell paintings, those actually, I believe, were started in 1943 as part of an effort during World War II to fundraise for war, to help the United States deploy and also support our allies there in Europe and in the Pacific. So there's a lot going on with this whole concept of freedom, the four freedoms. So I'm very excited that we're able to talk about this. Going back to, again, the freedom from want, this is a perfect timing because this week we celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States. And that has a whole history of volunteerism, of looking out for your neighbor, of taking care of each other, and of celebrating that and of celebrating what we have. So the origins of it, traditionally, the origin is that after the Pilgrims or some of the earlier European settlers settled in the United States, what was then the New World, they had survived a very difficult year, and they hosted a meal where they invited the indigenous peoples, the Native Americans, to join them. And they both brought things to the table. They both brought food, and they had a celebration. And it was kind of a day of Thanksgiving to celebrate what they had and new relationships, etc. Of course, there's a lot more behind that, but I kind of want to transition to what we are talking about, or how we talk about Thanksgiving today. So it was eventually made a national holiday. So everybody in the United States usually gets it off. A lot of times, Black Friday is a big retail event that happens right after Thanksgiving. So recently, in the past few years, a lot more retailers have actually opened up and had their employees working, but that's kind of slowed down a little bit, possibly due to the pandemic and trying to social distance. And so I think it's a positive thing that not as many people have to work on Thanksgiving. So traditionally, Thanksgiving is a day where you get together with family. And if you look at the Norman Rockwell painting, it is a family sitting around a table with a huge turkey on the table. And it was like they just brought the turkey out. It's the mainstay, it's the star of the show. And traditionally, that's how I think of Thanksgiving as well, where you have a turkey and you're with family. So growing up in Iowa, where I grew up, we lived in a small town. We lived very far away from my grandparents, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. So it was just our own family. But our very good neighbors decided that first year to invite us to their home so that we would have somewhere to celebrate Thanksgiving. And that became a tradition. We had Thanksgiving with them and their big extended family for probably about 20 years when my family was living there. And so it's just this idea that your table at Thanksgiving is not solely for family. It's also for people that might not have a place to go, or even there's this concept, of course, of Friendsgiving. And I know the TV show Friends is very popular here in Russia, as it is in the United States. And every year there would be an episode called the Thanksgiving episode, and it would be kind of the antics of the friends getting together and having Thanksgiving. And actually, that is something that I also do, which started with my family and being invited somewhere, but that made me want to invite others to my place. So when I was in Washington, D.C. as a young professional, me and my friends would have a Thanksgiving dinner, and we called it Friendsgiving. And to this day, it can be actually on the date, or it can be a different day. If you celebrate Thanksgiving with your family, maybe you'd want to have a different meal with just your friends. There's a lot of variations. But one thing I would like to highlight about our Friendsgiving that we had in DC is we were a group of mostly girls. So it was me and my girlfriends, and we were from all over. So I had my family is very traditionally Southern, from the Southern United States. So I brought dishes to the meal that were very popular with my family, and then from a certain region of the United States. So we had the turkey, but we also had something called sweet potatoes, which are basically yams, and they're kind of candied, and then you put marshmallows on top. So it's not a dessert, actually. It's part of the main meal, but that was something that I could bring that was special to me. So other people brought different things. Other people wanted just plain mashed potatoes, and like the food kind of becomes part of the history as well and part of the important tradition. And we had a couple of ladies from, one woman was from the Dominican Republic, and she brought this amazing chicken dish. Another woman was from Taiwan, and she made homemade Taiwanese dumplings. They were amazing. And so it doesn't have to be a turkey that you eat, but it is kind of a fun time to get together and celebrate those different traditions, those different parts of you. So yeah, another thing I want to touch on is this idea of charitable giving and volunteering. So those are very important as well. This is a time of year, this kind of kicks off our holiday season in the United States, where people are much more willing to give, or there's specific projects that maybe charities or social groups or churches or mosques have going on that you can give to. And it's kind of part of the holiday spirit. But also it's this idea that, hey, it's not, doesn't have to be just on Thanksgiving Day to work and go to a food bank or put together a food basket that has Thanksgiving items in it to a family maybe that can't afford it. But it's also this memory of, okay, throughout the year, how can I give back? And it doesn't matter if you have a lot to give financially or if you don't have a lot to give. It is really neat to be able just to give of your time and to give of your skills. And so that is something that even when I was a fundraiser for a charity for a couple of years, I was so thankful for people who would give of their time and their skills. And also, it's easier than sometimes in America, we often like to write a check to something. So we're like, okay, here's my financial contribution. I don't have time. But it's really more impactful when you can connect with your specific community. So in DC, oh, there's my dog. Come back. In Washington, I tutored for underprivileged children. I did some other things. So it's always important to connect to your community as well. And because that's my dog, Max, I'm going to grab him. And Jehan, I don't know if there's might be any questions. Or if you had any other things that I could talk about. I could also talk more about charities.
Sure. Well, I do have a question, just real quick before I ask them. I love your Friendsgiving thing you do with your friends. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have some friends from college, and we have a Thanks Moss. I haven't done it in years because I'm usually not in the U.S., but between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we get together and we have like a combined holiday. It's basically a reunion, and we call it Thanks Moss.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, okay. In my family, and I don't know if it's the same in yours, whenever we have Thanksgiving, one thing we do before we eat is we have to all go around the table and say, what are we thankful for? And we do that when we're not Thanksgiving, but something about Thanksgiving reminds you before you eat, you need to say, what are you thankful for in front of all your friends and family? So can I ask you, what are you thankful for this year?
Thank you. One of the things I'm thankful for, so I'm thankful for so many things. Let's see, I'm thankful for my dogs. So here's one of them. He's the one that was barking. I'm really thankful to be in Moscow during the pandemic because I have just a great community here. And then I also have just the city itself is just lovely to walk through. Unfortunately, I can't go to a lot of events right now, but I really enjoy walking through the city, going to parks, and getting to see what Russia has to offer. And that is something I feel very thankful for. I think in some other places it wouldn't be so great because they wouldn't have so many parks. There's so many wonderful things to do virtually.
I agree. I think there are very few other places I'd rather be right now than to be in Moscow with our community. There's so much to do, and there's so much you can do in Moscow,
Mm-hmm.
and be socially distanced from other people, especially in the winter. You can take walks, you can there's snow crunching under your feet, you can see the lights. So this is a beautiful place to be. And while I don't want the pandemic, I am thankful that we are here with the pandemic and not somewhere where we have to stay inside our house and for the entire duration of the pandemic with nowhere to go. So that's safe. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned sweet potato casserole or sweet potato dish. I'm also from the South. I consider it the South. I'm from Virginia, but the southern part of Virginia.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sweet potato, yeah, is definitely something we always had for Thanksgiving. What's your favorite dish that you would have for Thanksgiving? Like the one you have to have or you miss the most?
Yeah, I would have to say, so growing up in the Midwest, um, a lot of people would have what they called stuffing at Thanksgiving. So you'd buy a box of like pre-made stovetop stuffing, and basically it's this really flavorful kind of bread dish that originally stuffing is something you actually stuff it into the bird and it cooks inside the bird, and then you take it out and you eat it. But of course, we made it easier. But actually, I like something called dressing. So there's something called cornbread dressing. Instead of just regular bread, it also has cornbread in it, which is also, I believe, something that's kind of a little bit southern. And it's very savory. It has onions, it has celery. You could put some vegetable broth in there. And then basically, it's just a delicious bread dish. And you can put gravy on it. And yeah, that's just one of my favorite things. So that is something that at Friendsgiving I would make every year because it was more unique. You know, my friends were from California, they were from the Midwest, they were, from overseas. And so I really did want to share with them cornbread dressing. It's kind of an interesting variant. And, it's been interesting in the Foreign Service too, not just learning about Russian traditions and food and cuisine, but also just the cuisines from the people from here at the embassy, diplomats from all over the United States, and also having lived all over the world and getting to taste and get new food experiences through that as well. Jahan, do you have any? What would your favorite Thanksgiving food be?
So growing up, my favorite Thanksgiving food would be probably macaroni and cheese. That's
Mm-hmm.
and it's baked. It's not like from a box on the stovetop. It has to be baked in the oven. It has to have a
Yeah.
hard shell on top and creamy, in the middle. It's funny you mentioned that cornbread dressing. My very
Mhm.
first assignment, one of my friends made that, and I was like, wow, we have cornbread every Thanksgiving, but I've never seen cornbread, the stuffing made out of cornbread. And she
Mhm.
wouldn't give me the recipe. And then many years later, when she had a family of her own, she gave me the recipe, and she was like, "I can't believe I didn't share it with you." And I was like, "Yeah, we I guess it was her special thing." But then once she had her own family and stuff, she was like, "I don't have time to keep special secrets." But it was cornbread and mushrooms and green apples and all these things.
Okay.
That's all mixed together. It tastes really good.
Mhm.
But separately, you might think, "Why is that in dressing?" Definitely, macaroni and cheese was one of my favorites growing up, and still is.
Mhm.
What about Thanksgiving activities? I know some families play football or watch the Macy's Day
Yeah.
Parade.
So yes, we love to watch the Macy's Day Parade, and usually my parents are up and they're cooking, and the kids will kind of watch the Macy's Day Parade. We weren't a big football family, American football, but we did sometimes uh, play football. I lived in Iowa, so sometimes it would already be snowing. But a lot of times it would be a beautiful fall day without snow, and so we could, uh, with our family, there were 6 of us, so we had enough people to kind of do a football team, a little small football teams. We had a huge yard. And then my dad actually, he is a hunter. He hunts pheasants, which is a type of field bird. So he had a hunting dog, a British Springer Spaniel. So often on Thanksgiving morning, we had about 5 acres. So we would walk back into the field and go hunting. So usually if we saw a bird, if a pheasant flew up, I don't think my dad would actually, we never really came home with birds from doing that. But it was kind of a special thing for us to go hunting with him in the morning there on our property. But now they live in Tennessee, and so they don't have as much land. So there's no hunting going on, but maybe football, maybe football. What about you? Did you all enjoy a football game? Or, my sister-in-law loves to go Black Friday shopping. So she will get ready on Thanksgiving evening, and sometimes the stores open at midnight. She really loves to go shopping with her mom and take advantage of the deals. When we lived in Iowa, we were very far away from a big city with these stores that would have big deals. So we didn't do that as much. But that is definitely something that she and her family do. Do you do any shopping or do you watch football?
So I have never gone to a Black Friday event. The thought of standing outside in the cold, waiting for Walmart or a store to open up to buy something. I mean, like, I do get it because, like, my cousin does Black Friday. She's like, oh, I got a TV for $25, or I got one of the whatever, the iPads, DVD player. This thing I wanted, I got it for my kids, or like she'll go Christmas shopping and it's all like. But I like to shop slowly and look at things and try things on. Just the idea of people rushing into a store together and everyone's fighting over the same thing, like, that just doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, I don't care how much money I'm going to save. I'd rather sleep than have to do that. Okay, so Thanksgiving traditions. We always had the meal, which is always was later than you wanted to eat. My mom and my aunts would cook a lot of food, but we always were waiting for the food to be ready. So it was like, trying to pick at stuff. I remember just like waiting. It's going to be ready by 2:00 and you're eating at 4 or 5 because there was just so much food, and the turkey always took longer to cook than everyone expected. But while that was happening, I remember there was always a football game playing. And while I don't love football, I like the fact that like the family will be together, and like my dad's watching football, and like some of my family members are watching football. So I like that. Now with my family now that I have now, I want to do the football game. I think even though I don't play football, the idea of catching a ball flying towards me is kind of scary. I do want my kids to kind of do a football game on Thursday for some reason, like a small one, a little one. And we also usually walked after we ate that big meal. We would go. I'm from a part of Virginia that's lots of Civil War battles were fought. And so there are lots of national parks, battlefield parks. And we would go to the battlefield and walk around there because it was just a wide space. And we would walk there after we finish eating. So we'll probably go for a walk in Moscow on Thursday after we eat. And we'll hopefully play a game of football, a short game.
That'll be lovely. And one of the things, so my family, I know I talked a lot about charitable activities. We didn't always do something volunteering on Thanksgiving Day because that's a big volunteer day. But every year we would go down to the nearby city, about a 45-minute drive away, and we would help out at a soup kitchen. So a place where they were giving free meals to people in need. And we'd go and we'd bring some of the food, we'd help prepare the food, and then we'd serve it, and then we'd clean up. And that is something that actually I think really impacted my desire to always be looking for ways that I can contribute to the community. And then my sister, she ended up going and working for a charity in Moldova for 8 years. My other sister is now a social worker there in Tennessee. So she's helping people who, need a little bit of extra help, whether it's counseling or help getting connected to some of these social programs. And then my brother also actually works for the Salvation Army in Maryland. So there's a lot of my parents, by their example, I think instilled a lot of this kind of volunteerism, kind of caring for the community, that it's not something that, it's not just an ideal that something that the government can do or will take care of, but it's also something that we need to be doing and looking out for. But we also, I do have to say on a different note, we would go over to our neighbors and we would eat And then they had their extended family. So then we'd come back and take a nap and put our sweatpants on after the big meal. And then we would go back over there later when all of their family had left, and it would just be my family and our neighbors. And we would eat an extra piece of pie and get that extra friend time in. We'd, maybe watch a traditional movie. So yeah, so football wasn't a big part of it either for me, but we definitely put those sweatpants on. Absolutely. So, and that's a big joke I see a lot in TV shows, or maybe I'll be joking about it with my friends or colleagues. But actually, it is kind of nice to put on a pair of sweatpants and feel cozy after you've had a big meal.
Yes, I agree. It's definitely great to be cozy, and you have to have the second or third helping, because I feel like Thanksgiving is even better when you have the leftovers. If you don't have leftovers, it wasn't really Thanksgiving. This idea there's still more food. Freedom from want. There's still more food
Freedom
to eat.
from want, right?
Yeah. And just, the volunteering, yes, Thanksgiving around this time, definitely my kids now, we didn't do it here, but in our previous posts with Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, we always did can drives, food drives. And as a kid, we always did donating food and coats during this time. And we also adopted a family, usually like at our church. There would be a kids or a family you could adopt, like you could pull their name off the Christmas tree. And then you would go and see, this family wants a coat, this family wants a new bedspread, this family wants, this type of food. And you would go shopping for that family. Again, I'm not going on Black Friday, but you would go shopping for that family for what they needed, because they couldn't provide it for themselves.
And I think it is so special, because and if you can do that, that'll really instill that in your children as well. And something I learned from being in Moscow previously when I lived here, and also just Russia in general, what I've learned is, like I said before, sometimes Americans, we just like to write a check and be done with it. But a lot of people that I know here, a lot of Russian friends and colleagues, are so good about taking care of each other. If they have a sweater that they don't wear anymore, they look to see right away in their own community, among their friends and family, who needs a sweater, who wants this, or they find organizations for children, or for children in need, for refugees in need, and they usually know about these organizations because they know someone who works there, or they have some type of personal connection. And I think that's something that I've really taken away is, hey, don't just think about someone in need as someone you don't know or someone far away. Maybe we can help each other. And I think that's what's neat about our Friendsgiving too, is that, hey, who's out there, that might not have anywhere to go for Thanksgiving, and there's a place at my table for them, kind of the sense of inclusion and lifting us all up together. So I think that's really neat. And it is all about the relationships aspect of it as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. So I'm just going to say thank you so much, Laura, for giving us this overview of Thanksgiving, of freedom from want, of just your personal experiences and what you experienced growing up and what you do now. And it's been really great to learn more about you. I mean, I work with you, but I didn't know any of this information. So I feel like now I'm your best friend. You. Yeah. So it's been wonderful.
Thank you.
I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I'm thankful to be your new friend now. And thankful that you could join us tonight on the American Center online.
Well, thank you so much, Jehan. I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to hearing how your Thanksgiving went.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Good night.